Welcome to the Hacking Your Health podcast with Ben Canning and Dave Kennedy. Two guys heading out to hack body, mind, business, and beyond. We are here to provide a single source, bullshit-free guide to understanding your body and how you can live better for longer.
It's Dave Kennedy or Hacking Dave from the Hacking Your Health podcast. Just want to say, if you enjoy what we're doing here, what you're listening to, please share us. We're all over Instagram, Discord, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. Check us out at HTTPS wehack.health, as well as our Discord server, which is discord.gg/wehackhealth. Pretty much everything is wehackhealth. But thanks again for all the support, all of the stories that you're sharing. Share your successes, your struggles. That's what this community is here is for. That's why we do this podcast, and your energy supports us. So thank you so much, and hope you enjoy the podcast.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. Oh,
You're supposed to say I'm Ben Canning. What are you doing? You messed the whole thing up. No, keep it. We're going live.
I'm having a day. I'm Ben Canning.
Dave Kennedy. I was like,
and this is our first day on the job.
First day on the job of the podcast. So welcome everybody to the first episode we've ever done before, apparently. So yes. Well, the whole
describes how our day goes. Anyway,
I was about to say, like my internet hasn't been working properly. I came here, like my keyboard wasn't on. I was like having to reboot everything. I'm like, and it's obviously it's one of those days.
Welcome to our podcast. I'm Ben, and that's Dave, and we're going to talk about gym stuff today. Anyway, dude, what's up? How's your day been?
It's good. It's a good day. I got two stories I want to share because I think it's important to go through and discuss. One is the Orange Theory Day that I made a big mistake on, which was Friday of last week. So, me, Monday I wasn't able to go to Orange Theory because I was sick. I got a cold and wasn't feeling good. And, I did the proper thing and didn't go to Orange Theory. I did lift that day, which is, good thing. And then, but I didn't go to Orange Theory.
Are we over? Are we friends again now after that?
Yeah, we're friends. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the day that you questioned.
Definitely frequency of texts have been less, but just FYI.
I've just been busy as well. Yeah, you have been too, by the way. So, but the thing is I'm used to doing HIIT training in the morning, and there is some good data to show that you shouldn't do cardio prior to your resistance training, especially if resistance training is your main focus for building muscle. And but if you have a good enough space in between it to rebuild glycogen stores and to increase your ability to perform, it's usually not a big deal. So usually I'll work out at 6:45 in the morning to 7:45. I'll eat a really good meal. I'll eat a really good lunch, and then I'll eat I'll work out in the afternoon or evening. Just on Mondays, that's the only days that I do that type of routine. Wednesdays I don't lift. I just do Orange Theory, and then the rest of the days I lift, Sunday being a break. And so I had a busy day, and I decided, because it was Friday, I decided I was going to go to Orange Theory in the afternoon, and it's because I had missed it on Monday. So I got my push day
asking me for approval.
Could you do Orange Theory? Approval. Yes, and I didn't book it prior ahead of time. And I went to Orange Theory. Well, so first of all, I did my push session in the morning, and sometimes you just get in these zones where you just don't want to stop, and you just keep going, and you go and you go and you go, and you're there for 3 hours. Well, I was in the gym for 3 hours, pushing myself to an extreme. It was me and these weights. It was some primal caveman shit that was going down in this thing, and I was screaming, and everything was good. I had heavy metal music going, perfect clarity. Then I realized, I'm like, oh my God, it's 11:15, and I have Orange Theory at 12, and I haven't eaten anything the entire day. I was working on a fasting. So I go upstairs and I eat some oatmeal really quick, which probably was the worst thing I probably could have picked. I needed some simple carbohydrates or something.
Was it cooked or uncooked?
It was cooked, and it was warm, and I enjoyed it. But it also happened to be the same day as the 2,000 meter benchmark row, and which is a disaster, by the way. It's horrible. I don't know if anybody's tried to do a 2,000 meter row as fast as you possibly can. It's probably one of the worst things in life in general, just in general in life, that it could ever possibly happen to a human being. and it's just brutal. Like, I mean,
from my knowledge, the 2,000 meter, like for rowers is like, it's their benchmark. So it's like, it's far enough that it's a challenge. You can't sprint it. Like, it's too far to sprint, but it's not like long enough that you go at like a slower pace.
Yes. Yeah. And I'll tell you, well, I'll explain what happened, but so I'm doing this, and my previous PR time was 6 minutes and 24 seconds. Okay. And I'm on track. I'm pulling, everything's going good. And I get to like the 6 minute mark. Well, and that was probably like the 5 minute, 30 second mark. And my entire body locks up. Like, I mean, just cramping all over. I got no energy left. And I can barely pull, you know, the bar to pull it back. Like, I mean, I was that exhausted, and it sucked because like I was beating the guy next to me, of course. And then like all of a sudden I got nothing. I'm like, what's going on? I can't pull, you know, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And I stood up, and both of my arms completely locked up, as in full on cramping. Like my triceps
were T-Rex arms?
Yeah. So my arms are like this, and they're cramped up, and my tricep is like locked. Both of them, I'm hitting my arm like this, trying to get it to go away. It locked up for 20 minutes. It was 20 minutes of a cramp that I couldn't get over. So, but you're doing other things at the same time. So I'm running like this, you know, like with my arms like a T-Rex.
And then I'm T-Rex on a treadmill.
Like literally and I'm pounding water. I'm trying to pound as much water as I possibly can. You know, I get to the weight room area, and I'm like, well, listen, I'm just going to pound through this. So I go and I get the 50-pound weights. I normally would have gotten the 80-pound weights, by the way, but I got the 50-pound weights. I get to the point where I have to lift them, and my arms again lock up and cease, and I drop the weights, and I just do crunches the rest of the time. And that was it. So like, it was the worst experience I had ever done before. And it was such a stupid thing to not replenish after I had got done with my training. And then to go to put myself through a 2,000 meter row, which is going to burn anything that I had left and then some, was not the proper way to go about doing this. So FYI, don't do that. You know, like it sucked. It's honestly like the worst pain I've been in a really long time. Like, it was really bad cramping. I thought I was going to die, man.
Well, I'm glad that you didn't.
Yep.
So yeah, what the moral of the story is, that none of that would have happened if you had eaten your oats uncooked, because it would have replenished your glycogen resource
completely replenished.
Would have been good. So the secret is to not cook. You know,
not cook your oats.
That's not true, by the way, just in case. What's going on with me? Not much, dude. I, as you know, have had a busy day back to back with calls all day. I have a story from over the weekend. So my mum always has these bright ideas, and they sound awesome at the time until it comes to like the bit that I need to participate in. So she phoned me the other day, and she was like, we're going to move the shed on Sunday. I was like, right, what are we moving the shed for? It's like, well, we were meant to do it next week, but you're away, so we need you here to do it. I'm right, okay. So we get down, we move the shed, and like, number one, the amount of stuff that came out of the shed, it was like Aladdin's cave. So we get there, and I'm like, I'm not really sure that everybody here is actually up for lifting the shed. So I've had the phone Helmy. I was like, tell me, I've got a situation. I need something lifted. The shed needs moved. He texts back, how many kgs? I was like, I don't know how many kilos it is. Just fucking get down and help me lift it. So he turns up just after a bit of sea swim, flip-flops on. Everybody's looking at him like, this guy's definitely going to lift it. It's just straight up. We moved it. It was a complete shit show. But we definitely could not have moved the shed from one side of the garden to the other if it hadn't been from Helmy. So I may not have.
It was funny because I think your exact words were, I called in reinforcements, and it was Helmy.
Yes,
and I was like,
it was Helmy.
That is definitely reinforcements.
Yes. yeah.
Even all the friends that have Helmy's the one that you want to help you move.
Yeah. Even,
I wonder how many times he gets asked, can you help me move? You know?
Yeah, can you help me lift this thing? No, even Mark, Mum's partner, he saw like, it's like Helmy went into the house, and Mark was standing outside, and he goes, he's in flip-flops. I was like, he deadlifts in flip-flops. Like, I think we'll probably be all right. So we got the shed moved, not a problem. It's to the other side of the garden. And Mum's like, I think it looks much better there. I'm like, well, it's not fucking ever moving again. So the shed has been moved, and that was my story. But the good thing about, I guess the moral of the story, of the lesson is, number one, have strong friends. But number two, the transferable skill of what we do in terms of strength and training allows your body to do those sort of things. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was laughing at my brother, like, God love him, not really into training, probably built like I was 10 years ago. I honestly thought he was going to snap in half whenever he tried to lift the shed. I was like, we need to get him in the gym. But it's good to be able to, like, actually be able to use your body for functional things. Do you know what I mean? Like be able to have the strength to go and do that and help out. So that's my win for the week.
I always find that joke funny that, like, I always get told like, oh my God, no one's going to mess with you because you're so big or whatever. And the truth of the matter is like, I am sore all the time. Like the chances of me actually winning a fight. Like, here's the thing. Like if you ever see a bodybuilder or somebody that's just a big dude, chances are they're so sore that they want nothing to do with anything fighting, and they're probably going to bitch out because
that's why they're such nice guys. Like you always say that the biggest dudes in the gym are the nicest guys. Like they're not going to piss anybody off. No. So all you have to do is like poke them in the chest, just push day.
Like, it's just today. Or God forbid you hit him on a legs day, it's done. Like there's nothing that's going to happen. You're like, listen, dude, I got nothing. Like just take my wallet. It's fine. But
how many days a day? So that was cool.
Yeah, it's actually funny today. We went to a different Orange Theory place, and everything's resolved, by the way, on the singing issue, I guess. I guess he doesn't sing anymore, which is a good thing. So we're back to normal. But Aaron wanted to try the new one that I had gone to last week, and so we went there today. And this is a good example of not reading your audience, I think. So Erin was doing squats, and she has had leg injuries before, which is, she's really particular on how she does her squats so she doesn't do a re-injury. And it's not a full squat because she's got all of these knee problems. And the doctor has said specifically, like, hey, if you're going to do them, you have to do them this way. And the trainer comes by and is like, hey, you need to go do a deeper squat. You need to do this. And then Erin, bluntly says, hey, I have knee injuries. This is what my doctor had said to me. And then he then continues to teach her, like trying to tell her how to do a squat. She's like, no, if you do these more, it's going to build the muscles around your knees and you're going to be fine. And she's like, dude, I'm 40. She's like, I'm not 20 like you or whatever. I need to be able to do this like this way. Or I'm going to re-injure myself. And last time I re-injured myself, I was out for 3 months. And then he comes back again a second time and like tried to like coach her. I'm like, so I was actually getting a little agitated. I'm like, dude, like, just let her do her thing. Obviously if she's doing it in proper form or she's going to injure herself, that's a different story. But, just a little bit of not reading your audience there. But what I did like was someone came over to me and was like, we were all talking in a group about how much you could lift. And you didn't disappoint or whatever, because I went and got the 80-pound or 90-pound weights and was doing dumbbell presses with that. So I got some compliments there, which I thought was really cool. So it was a good week, good solid training week. Just got on push. Like literally I'm sweaty. And everything else right now because
it's working. I got your photo. We've decided that this training is working. The
training is actually working for the first time ever.
Before we get into it, I need to take a moment to appreciate all the clients and everybody that's been sharing their photos. Like, I genuinely, David Boyd example, Luke sent me a video. I saw Mike
boulder shoulders right there, dude. Jeez, oh,
yeah. Even Jill sent me one of her check-in photos. He's like hit a front double bicep. I'm like, God damn it, everybody's fucking killing it. So I just want to give everybody a shout out because it's so cool to see the work paying off and everybody sharing. And actually, like Luke had a conversation with me there and he was like, sometimes I look at myself and don't necessarily believe it's me. And what a funny thing to think and see. So yeah, shout out to everybody who's making progress. There, it goes way beyond that. Tyler posted a picture earlier on in the yesterday, I think, or today. Just so many people doing so much cool stuff. It's very rewarding on my end, but genuinely sometimes, like David Boyd put that picture up and I had to like double take. I was like, holy shit, what way have I done his program? Because he's definitely shoulders are growing.
Well, it's funny because Boyd has taken the same mannerisms as I have, and I'm, like he would always like send me a compliment and say like, hey dude, you look amazing or whatever. I'm like, oh man, it's just good lighting. Don't like perfect lighting, angle, pump, everything else.
So you're still there. Even after our conversation 2 or 3 weeks ago on the podcast, you're still not accepting compliments.
No.
It's just the t-shirt. It's just
the t-shirt. It just kind of fills it out, and then yeah. But he said the same thing to me. He's like, oh, it's just good lighting. I'm like, bro, like you can't hide the shoulder popping out like that. Like regardless if it was good lighting or not, you can see the shoulder popping out. Like that's a different thing. Okay. So just take the compliment. I will never take the compliment, but you take the compliment and then we'll go from there. But he's looking really great. Yes, and as are a lot of the folks out there. It's really cool to see the progress just in the hacking health community and the folks that you're training as well is mind blowing. Every single week. And it's crazy because like you haven't seen, sometimes you don't see these folks for like a few weeks or months or whatever, and then they post the picture like, damn, like that went from 0 to 60 really quick, and it's really cool to see that.
It's cool to see as well, and obviously we've got I've got the Munich event coming up next week, but the next US one at the end of May. And I think the cool thing about that is, actually seeing the people in person. So the people who were in the Nashville trip, the change that will be in them. And I think there's definitely an underlying motivation to have a change within the team. Like they want people to go, fucking hell, look at you. Like, you're so much bigger, you're so much leaner, or whatever the insert compliment here as to whatever direction they were trying to go into. So it's cool to sort of see that happening and the sort of chat coming around that. So yeah, very, very rewarding part of my job, seeing people achieve things that they never thought that they could.
Yeah. And that gets us into the conversation of today, which is body contouring or sculpting, and how do you get the desired results that you want to. And this spawns up from questions that we get quite often, I think, in the chat and through various folks on social media, which is around like, how do I grow my abs? How do I see my abs? How do I see, clear definition in certain areas? And, the thing is that, we talked about morphing your body or adapting your body to your surroundings or what you want to accomplish, right? Our bodies will adapt to what we want. And I heard an analogy. Was it you that told me this? It might have been you that no, it wasn't.
Definitely
It might not have been you. I don't think it was you. But basically, I think it was a YouTube short video, actually. Probably from one of your favorite Australian guys or whatever that you just like, or the UK guy.
He's from UK.
No, I know. He sounds Australian. Anyways, it was something to the fact of like, I work out every single day and put my body through punishment because I'm telling my body what to do. And I don't want it to get lazy or something like that. It was just kind of like basically saying
definitely doesn't sound like me. It was not me who said that.
It was not you, yeah. But and the truth of the matter is like, if we have power over our bodies, which we do, our brain obviously controls every aspect of our body from, if we get cold or sick, we have multiple ways of our immune system kicking in, adaptive as well as preventative. We have all of these things that kind of kick in, and it's up to us to really control our bodies in various different ways to say, hey, you need to go in this direction or not. And I think, when you look at getting the desired results that you want to, we've talked about this before on the podcast where like everybody's like, oh, I want to drop 20 pounds and be perfect at 210 or maybe perfect at 200, maybe perfect at, 110 or 120. And the truth of the matter is that the weight is really not an accurate number at all for your body type and what you want to accomplish. And I think this resonates the largest with me. I was actually looking at a picture of myself because I posted the Medium thing to somebody the other day, and it's funny because like I go to that Medium page that I did, and it was a post I did about hacking your health, a journey to live longer, and this was in November of 2020 that I posted this, and I looked at the picture there, and it's interesting because body type was, so this is what basically two years ago or year and some change, right? So November 2020 and what
2.5 years ago,
2.5 years ago, right? And, I looked at my post for that and some of the pictures there, and I'm like, I look good. I'm thin, lean, decent, but, I don't have a lot of muscle mass. But if you look back then, I was super proud of obviously where I was at. You don't really see a lot of definition in the shoulder. Don't see a lot of bicep definition. Chest is a little bit formed. You can see a little bit dimples in the little bit of a dip in the abs, but overall, relatively lean, but I don't have, the definition that I would want or that I wanted, in that period of time. And what's interesting is I think I've asked this before, but like, early on in when I was starting is like, hey, how do I get defined abs? And you're like, well, just lose your body fat. And that's the truth. Like there's no real good way of saying, hey, how do I do a certain exercise to get more defined abs? Now there's ways of exercising those muscles and getting them to be a little bit larger or more defined in certain ways. But if you have a layer of body fat over there, you're not going to see those. And unfortunately for men, as well as women, body fat is stored typically in our stomach areas for most people, not everybody, but for most people. Obviously the back, the love handles are another area that's kind of like the last to actually go. And so we have to look at, I think, our bodies as a continual process of, one, growing muscle mass, and two, keeping body fat percentage to a certain level to get that type of definition that you want to. But if you just strip your body fat off, you can look fairly well defined with abs and a little bit of muscle, imprint, but you'll still be relatively small in nature, and you may not be happy with it. You may be happy with that. But it all depends on what your goals are for what you want to accomplish. And it's funny because I was looking at Cardi B downstairs, and, you look at Cardi B and you were very lean in that picture, obviously muscular, But the muscle mass that you have now is very different than the muscle mass that you have in that picture. Very different. Obviously, huge differences between that one and this one. And, again, going back to your goals, building muscle takes a lot of time and effort. It takes, years and years and years of continually trying to progress in this and to build that muscle mass out and, to get to a certain point where you're comfortable with it. And usually that's never. But it's really trying to figure out what you want to accomplish and then moving towards those goals to get to the type of desired body type that you want to. And I think that's a good discussion to have because I don't think a lot of people know how to get there. Right. And for me, I always assumed like, well, if I just lift for like a year or two, I'll have, the same type of muscle mass that somebody that's been lifting for 10 years has. Well, it doesn't work that way. Right. So, how do we sculpt our bodies to get to the right type of proportion, density, size, that we want to, and recognizing, I think that it's a slow process to get there.
Yeah, it is. It is a massively slow process, and I always laugh at the people who say like, no, I don't want to, get big and bulky. And I'm like, I have literally put all of my effort for the past 8 or 9 years to get big and bulky, and I'm still not there. So you're not just going to get there by accident. The first thing I'll say is, and I hear this quite often, like I will hear people either on social media or in the chat or on calls or whatever ask, what exercises do I need to do to get rid of this and then hold their belly? And I'm like, literally any. You could do any exercise and be in a calorie deficit and you will lose that. There is no, number one, we can't spot reduce whenever it comes to fat. So everybody will hold fat storage in different areas. I'm going to say that I feel like I'm quite fortunate that I don't necessarily hold a lot in my front. So I can be slightly higher in terms of body fat percentage and still look relatively lean because I hold the majority of my lower back. Now, that is unfortunate because I hold it on my lower back, which isn't good fun either way. The other thing to note is, like, realistically, if you want to see your abs, you probably need to be below, like, I would say 18 to 20% body fat. If you want to see your abs, obviously the lower your body fat comes, the more you will see it. The other thing that I will say, and I'll sort of touch back to something we were speaking about last week, there are exercises that you can do to increase the size of them and the density and the definition, but you also need to be in a calorie surplus to do that, the same with building any other muscle, and you still need to progressively overload it the same as any other muscle. So, whenever you sort of switch phases or whenever you're programming it, it's not just a case of, oh yeah, I just do 50 sit-ups at the end of my workout and I'm going to have a six-pack. It needs to be done and treated like any other muscle to build it in terms of like density and strength and whatever else. In terms of like whenever you sort of think of your overall physique, what I would say is focus on getting as lean as you possibly can and are comfortable with maintaining, and then decide on the areas that you want to focus on. And the way that I would sort of look at it, or the way that I would program it, is I generally would look at like 2 or 3, probably 2 areas per training block to focus on in a surplus. And I generally go, like, if it hasn't been suggested or haven't had someone tell me, I would generally sort of look at, if it's guys, I would do like shoulders and arms first, or chest and on shoulders, or chest and arms, or something like that. Something that you could see the biggest difference in straight away. For females, I would generally do like back and glutes, because again, that sort of generally gives the perspective around shape in terms of like making one bit bigger and one bit smaller, and the same with guys. And then what I would do for that is, the simplest way to look at it is just do more volume in those areas, and to keep it super simple without getting into like total amount of reps or total amount of volume, I would just do 1.5 times the amount of work in those areas than I am in other areas. It's not just a case of, okay, this training block, I'm just going to focus on chest and arms, and I just train chest and arms every day, which sounds great, but you will be very unbalanced and not have a well-rounded physique. And I always laugh at Adam. You were on the call with Adam whenever, like years and years ago, whenever he did the supplements chat. He is like, has a massive chest and massive arms, and everybody always asks him, he goes, yeah, I just trained chest and arms 14 times a week for like 5 years. It was easy. But yeah, so in terms of that, like I would always do like 1.5 times the amount of volume in those areas to sort of improve them in relation to your physique. And again, stay at a level of body fat that you're comfortable with, start to push calories, reevaluate whenever you get to the end of the phase. Do I need to do a slight mini cut to strip back in terms of the body fat? And then, okay, this time I'm going to focus on calves and hamstrings, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, so what's great about the training programs that you have is, like, we always have a discussion around, hey, what areas do I need to focus on, as part of like my physique or body that may be lacking in certain areas? Like as of late, it's been my chest area, which has been the one that I've really needed to kind of build up quite a bit, as well as calves.
Your connection, you have a good connection with your chest now. Remember you saying I don't have a good connection? It's like an emotional thing.
It's an emotional thing now. Like actually today I was noticing I was doing the pec deck on my M3 and getting the full stretch and going through, and I was like, I feel you, man. We're good. I can talk to you now. We're good. So my pecs and I are talking.
Well, number one, I would say, just give a bit of focus, like obviously the emphasis that we placed on those areas over time, they definitely are working. Like we have had areas that we sort of needed to catch up on, and we have, it's definitely working. But I think, for me, especially whenever it comes to chest, like, and again, to sort of go back to the videos that I shot with Helmy last week, like the setup videos, like you should be able to contract the muscle without any weight. And that shows like a good level of control or mind muscle connection without having to put it under load or under stress. And even with like the chest, like I can do that movement and I can feel, anybody, the 40 people who are watching get to see me hold my chest, but I can feel my chest contract in that area. And it's having an understanding of what way muscles move in a certain like pattern or what way they need to sort of fall in line, whether it's the cable or the dumbbell or whatever else. I'm prioritizing that. And even to like go a little bit deeper in terms of chest, like if you think about the upper chest, do you want to focus on like the mid to lower part of your chest? Is it the bit that needs work, or is it the mid to upper to give that sort of like shelved off look? Where like you can be that specific in terms of detail. And I remember like, when I'm having conversations like this with clients, I'm like, you can just literally tell me what it is you want and I can program around it. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, if you want to have bigger arms, let me know and I will make sure you have bigger arms. Like you can be as detailed as you want and as specific as you want with those things.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to talk about the progressive overload concept, because that's probably the core fundamental piece of all of this in resistance training, which we've discussed quite a bit, heavily in previous podcasts. But I think progressive overload is probably one of the most fundamental concepts to building muscle and to get those desired results that you want to, because our bodies naturally adapt to the weight that we're pushing. Okay, so if we're pulling or whatever, but the weight that we're doing from a resistance training perspective, and so if we're lifting the same weights every single week, our body gets used to that, and it's like, I don't need to do anything more. We're good, because I've adapted to the weight that I need. So if you're doing a bench press and you do 200 pounds each week and you never go up, albeit be a volume, be it weight, actual weight distribution, or be it your kind of explosive nature of how you're coming through that, your muscles get adapted and used to that weight, and they no longer feel the need to actually continue to build up. You might have small incremental gains, but it'd be very small in nature. And that's why it's important, when you're talking about contouring your body or physique to certain ways, that it comes through obviously building muscle mass, and building muscle mass, as well as ensuring that you can have some sort of leanness to see the definition in those specific muscle groups. And with progressive overload, you really got to focus on the increased amount of weight as you're doing resistance training to the point of, either failure or near failure, or, increasing the intensity of that workout so that your muscles don't get kind of, stagnant in what they need to do, and are continuously being shocked into saying, hey, I need to build more muscle to, compete with this. And I think it's so fascinating because there's so many studies on progressive overload. Progressive overload has been shown to have significant health improvements and longevity. So, obviously the more muscle mass you have as you age and you're able to maintain, the longer that you live. But second, I think it's just fascinating that our bodies are like, oh, hey, I need to lift more heavy. Well, let me make this easy for you next time. So let's build more muscle so that we can go and accomplish this. But if you don't, then you're not going to have the ability to continuously make the progress that you need to. So it's not that you need to, write down every single number that you're doing. I do, just from a general high level perspective, but, you need to kind of know what you did the week before or the previous workout before, and try to, take it just a little step further. And, I think what's a really good, benchmark, for all of this, is, in rep ranges can be a really easy way for you to remember, what you're accomplishing. So if you're going and doing a bench press, for example, and your focus is on strength, for your specific bench press, your compound movement, focusing on the, 5 to 8 rep range. And as you start getting more towards the, higher side of this, the 8 rep range, you start to increase your weights. Okay. So if you're doing 200 one week and you're able to knock out 5, but then, you start to get to 6, you start to get to 7, you're going to be increasing volume at that period of time, and your muscles are going to adapt to that. And you can continue to get the gains that you need to. But once you start getting to like 8, you want to increase that weight, drop it down again, so that maybe you're only getting 5 or 6 or 4 or 5. And you can, start to increase that strength as you're going along with it. Higher rep ranges typically, are the areas that you start to build the size of the muscle, the endurance of the muscle, whereas lower rep ranges, higher weights and intensity usually are the for us to build the strength side of the aspect of weight training. So, progressive overload being a fundamental concept that you really need to understand as you're going through this. You're not going to see the results that you want to as you're trying to get into this, stage of building muscle or what you're ever trying to accomplish. Again, increase the weights either by volume or intensity or, through the actual amount of weight that you're trying to push, can have, the intended results that you need to continue to progress as you're going forward.
Yeah, and I think that I actually had this conversation with Thomas Grant earlier on, whenever it comes to understanding progressive overload and understanding the progress. And I guess the simplest way that I can put it is the reason that I use the rep ranges is because that's what you sort of want to work between. So we'll use 10 to 15 as an example, because that's what I did with him earlier. So essentially you want to say, for example, you do 10 reps at 200 pounds at whatever exercise. Note that down for this week. Know that next week you need to get 11 or 12, and you do that repeatedly until you hit the upper rep range of 15. Whether that takes you 2 weeks or 5 weeks or whatever it is, you want to make sure you're progressing towards that. Once you've hit that upper rep range, now caveat to that, if you're feeling good in that session, whenever you have to get to 15, if you feel like doing 17 and you've got it, go for it. Like, don't limit yourself just because it's capped. Once you hit the upper rep range, or once you feel like you've maxed that out, then what you do is you increase the weight, and the goal is to get back to 10. If you don't get 10, absolutely fine. Essentially, whenever you're moving up in the rep ranges, or whenever you're moving up in the weight, it's a case of it potentially will be a new stimulus, a new weight, and something that you will potentially struggle with. So if it takes you like 2 weeks to get you back up to the 10, again, that's absolutely fine. But it's more of this is what we're aiming for. So essentially, we up the weight and you potentially get 8. That's absolutely fine. Work until you get 10. Okay, now you've got that as your working weight. Then you go 11, 12, repeat the process 15. And if you do that week in, week and week and week, months and months and months, then the difference in terms of like years is absolutely massive. And I was actually thinking about this the other day. Like, I always remember in Gymco and in most commercial gyms, the heaviest dumbbell is 50 kilos, which is like 110 pounds. So that was always the goal. It was like, that's what you're working towards. And like, whenever I worked in Gymco, there was absolutely no fucking chance I was ever going to lift them. I think the most I ever got to was like 42 kilos. So that was always the goal to work towards, like in some way, shape or form. And obviously, like, it's been about 3-4 years since I've been training in a gym. And now I do that as just like the norm. So it's like all of those times where I have taken the time to progressively overload, did 35 kilos for 15, did 40, the whole way up, everything. It has given me this sort of like new baseline of strength that if you ask me right now to pick up 50 kilo dumbbells, I could probably do it. Like, I'm saying that I would maybe need to warm up and do a couple of push-ups or something, but I know I could get the reps in because I know what it feels like. I know that my body can handle it. And it's just because I've done the boring work of repeating the same thing over and over again and doing the literal reps to build a new baseline of strength. And that goes across the board. And another thing to sort of think about whenever it comes to progressive overload and gaining strength, like if you are thinking of that surplus, the thing that you also need to progressively overload is your food, because essentially what we need to do is use additional weights and use additional reps to create a new stimulus on the body, but your body will only have so much fuel or so much room to go in that. You need to progressively overload your food on top of it as well to again create a new stimulus to allow the growth, to allow the repair, and to allow everything to sort of happen. I think that is one thing that is massively overlooked, because I've had people before being like, oh, but I just can't put on any weight. Like, I'm doing all this stuff and, I'm lifting the weights and I just can't get any bigger. I'm like, well, how much food do you eat? And like, oh, well, like, 1,800 calories. And like, that's your fucking problem. You need to eat more food and you will get stronger and you will build muscle. So as you progressively overload with weights, you need to match your food alongside it.
And that's a big thing that we've focused on as part of our training too, which is, if I'm going into more of an intensity type of block or a bulking cycle, we slightly increase my calories over time to match, the muscle building phases that we're accomplishing. Or if we're in a cutting phase, more so, still hitting the workouts, but maybe not as much as an intensity. And as part of that might be a little bit of a byproduct of muscle loss. But there's typically like 4 ways of hitting that type of progressive overload. And one is going to be volume, right? So rep ranges are a great aspect of that, because you can say, okay, even if you're able to crank up, if your rep range is 10 to 15 and you're feeling good, well, go to 20, go to 25. It's not gonna hurt you to do extra reps. And today's a great example of that. I'd gotten onto the M3 to do my chest press, and the same weight as I had last week on there, and I was moving up, but I knew I wanted to get around 12 to 15 from a rep range perspective, and I cranked out 22. So I'm not going to stop. I feel good. I'm still going to go. Yeah, I'm still going to increase the weight afterwards. But I'm not going to bitch out of a set at 15. Like, okay, I hit my 15 number, that magic number, and all of a sudden I'm good. No, I'm going to keep putting tension on my muscles from a volume perspective, increase my volume from last week, because ultimately that's what's going to get me the desired result. So use rep ranges loosely. If you're getting into the 20 to 25 to 30, rep range, you definitely want to increase your weight, but you're also going to, there's circumstances too, right? Because, last week I was only able to hit 13 of them, but this week I was able to hit 22. And it could be a combination of recovery. I slept really good yesterday. I gave myself a little bit more extra time before my I wasn't sick last week, right? So, I'm not sick this week as I was last week. So there's a lot of variables that go into, the ranges. So yes, I increased the weight afterwards as I went through, but it's not always going to be an exact science of I did 15 last week, so I can do 16 this week. Or if I'm going to drop it down more weight, I'm going to hit 12 or 13. It's not always the same, but when you increase the volume, that's important. The intensity, which is, how explosive, you are with a specific movement, can also have a big impact on progressive overload. The frequency. So we had talked about this in the last podcast, but there was an interesting study that came out that measured somebody that hit a muscle group once or twice a week, as well as somebody that hit a muscle group 4 times a week. Now, the volume was the same with the 1 and 2 day period cycle of the 2 individuals, or sorry, the test group. This was a test studies. And then they also had a group that lifted, 4 to 5 times a week on the same muscle groups. Now, but it wasn't to failure. It wasn't to, a specific time period. It was, the volume was spread over 4 days. So you're 4 or 5 days. So you're not, completely fatiguing your muscle. You're not getting to, complete failure in any way, shape, or form, but you're still doing the same amount of volume. And what they found is that the frequency made a big difference in the amount of muscle mass. Substantial. It was like a 34% increase in muscle mass. And that, those folks that were doing it 4 or 5 times a week versus the ones that were doing it once or twice a week. So the frequency that you do things can also make a big difference, because you're continuously hitting that muscle and stimulating that muscle to hit a certain type range, and then continue that muscle building phase throughout the entire week versus, a few days. Because as you hit a muscle group, let's just say I hit biceps today, my body's probably going to be repairing itself for the next, 2 days. But if I don't hit biceps for another, week, it's not going to continuously build.
Never,
my biceps.
Never happen. There's not a week that would go by that you definitely don't hit your butt. Never.
No, I'm going to hit biceps after this too. I'm not supposed to, but I'm with.
I'm literally doing it right now. You can't see it right now. You guys can't see it.
Yeah. So there's that. There's a frequency, and there's also interval duration, and intensity also goes to strength too, right? So if you're doing explosive, movements in the 3 to 5 to 8 rep range, doing super heavy, your focus is strength at that point, you're going to have progressive overload. The interval duration is also important. So, this is what we call typically the time under tension. Time under tension, you might have heard us talk previously before on tempo, where
you may have seen people curse me out on social media and or in Discord about tempo, middle finger
Tempo's
emojis.
Evil is
generally negative. Yeah. Do you know what? People are generally negative around it until they see the results and they're like, well, this tempo is not that bad.
It takes a while to get used to. And what we're talking about with tempo is different ways to control a movement. So your eccentric, so your way down on something is going to be the phase where you can build the most amount of muscle mass. Okay. And so studies have shown this, not, a ton, but, when you're going up, it's going to be more of your explosive strength. Going down is going to be more of your endurance or muscle hypertrophy or growth. And so with tempo, typically you can do different types of tempo for different types of things, but you're going to have typically an explosive movement up, for 1 to 2 seconds, and then, a little bit of a pause on top, and then, a slow controlled, version of coming down, which is going to increase your time under tension. And in my tonal, there's actually an eccentric mode on there, which is freaking awful. It's like the most horrible thing that anybody could have ever invented on a machine before. But as you go up, so if I'm doing bicep curls, for example, and I go up and let's just say I'm using 20 pounds, I go up on 20 pounds, but then as soon as I get to the top, it knows that I'm at the top and it kicks into, 5 to 10 pounds additional. So as you're going down, you might be dropping down 30 pounds. And so it's hacking your muscles to do higher weight volume as you're going down on the eccentric movement with that tempo type of speed. So interval duration or time under tension can also be a really awesome way for progressive overload, especially if your goal is building muscle mass. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to lift heavy. By the way, you don't have to lift heavy to do progressive overload. You don't have to lift heavy to go up in strength and size. You could definitely do more on the lower weights, higher rep ranges, and tempo could be a really good thing to incorporate into that process to really help you build those muscle components as you go through it.
I think that to me comes down to what you have available. So obviously whenever the shit hit the fan, everybody went into lockdown first time, and I had to be quite creative, and people were super limited to what they have. So it was a lot of like using tempo, using bands, finding other ways that we can make things harder, more reps, things like that. I will say as well, like there was a young kid that used to train in Gymco, and he was just so, I guess, methodical is the best way that I could do it. But he literally was like, you're talking about getting 13 reps last week, getting 22. He was not about that. He was like, I need to get, if I got 5 last week, I have to get 6 this week. And that was it. I got the 6th rep and that was it. Now, to me, that's boring as shit. Just getting that. And he admitted that it was boring, but it was like, whatever the movement is. And he was young, like he must have been only like 19, if even. And to be fair, like over time, obviously he did go in size, but it just shows that like it doesn't need to, if you just want to be methodical and do 10 reps and then next week do 11 and then next week do 12, like it can be done. But just whenever you said that, it made me think of Tom, his name was, but it's just like so methodical with that.
Yep. And, it's those controlled movements or, understanding what you're doing, I think from a lifting perspective, that's so important. And I think if you're just new to this, where a trainer can really help out in those areas. I'm a big advocate for trainers. Obviously I've had a lot of success with trainers. It's or a trainer, I should say, not trainers. Although Coach Tony with the booty buster on tonal was pretty good. But it's important to note that, you need to know what you're doing when it comes to resistance training, or else you're going to be, a year out and you're like, I just wasted a whole year and I didn't see any progress. And I think that's the most like frustrating thing that, I've talked about on podcasts before. Is my scariest thing that I worry about is not making progress for all the work and effort and consistency I'm putting into it. And people will talk about, hey, consistency is so important. And that's the only thing you need is consistency. Well, yes, that's true. Like consistency, everybody say discipline is big, is an important piece too. But when it comes down to it, just going to the gym every single day is what you should try to be becoming accomplished with, or whatever your schedule is, 3 times a week or whatever, being consistent with that routine. However, if you want to continuously make progress, you have to understand how your body operates and the fundamentals around it, or else you're not going to make the progress that you want to. And I'll see that from time to time on folks online. Like, I've been lifting for 2 years and I don't see any progress. Well, what's your routine look like and how are you doing it? Because there's obviously something wrong there, either from a nutritional aspect, a sleep aspect, recovery aspect, or how you're training that is making it so that you're not hitting these specific areas. So I think it's important for folks to understand, like, it's not just about going and throwing up weights. It's also about how do we do progressive overload? How do we give ourselves the adequate amount of protein to be able to, ensure the muscle building complex? When is the best time to get protein? Typically in the morning. So those types of things, I think, all come together in your progress of body contouring or sculpting that allows you to get to the desired results that you want to. But it's all of those things that kind of have to hit on all cylinders. If your nutrition's not right, but you're still lifting heavy and everything else, well, you're going to be strong as hell and you're going to have a lot of muscles, but you're going to have a ton of fat on top of that as well because your nutrition's not solid. Same thing for sleeping. If you're not sleeping all the time, you're not going to recover well. So your gains of what you're going to accomplish from a muscle recovery perspective, what you feel like in the gym, how you feel in general is going to be off. Sleep probably one of the most fundamental things that you can possibly do. So it's up to you to get those things kind of locked into place. But also, it's so important to understand those fundamental concepts around lifting, or else you're just going to go to the gym and just be going through the cycles. Be like, well, I just did bench press, but I've been doing 150-pound bench press for 6 years, and I don't understand why I don't have a chest. Well, it's because you've done the same exact weight the entire time. You got to go up in weight or reps or whatever. Volume again, volume, intensity, frequency, or interval duration. Those are all the four things that you need to focus on as part of the progressive overload concepts of what you're doing, time and retention, everything else. So, again, if you're not getting the desired results, are you doing the right things to get there? And we should say that, caveat this with, again, it's a slow process. You shouldn't expect to be, going up 50 pounds in a week. Your body slowly adapts to this. So, have patience, but know that you're doing the right things. And I think, a trainer can definitely help out with that.
Yeah. And I think that's number one, as a total tangent, and it was definitely brought up, I think, on one of the Andy Galton Huberman Lab podcasts, or somebody has definitely mentioned, but I was reminded of it today, that just you talking about making sure you get an adequate protein. Consuming protein is anabolic, independent of movement. So consuming protein will allow you to build muscle without actually doing any movement. My mind was absolutely blown with that. And I was reminded, like the first time I heard it and the second time today that I was reminded of it, I think that's absolutely insane. The next thing that I will say is, in terms of like the just going through the motions and just I go to the gym. It's not the process that's broken. It's like, oh, but that doesn't work for me. It's not, because it works. Like, trust me, I've done it for a very long time. I have taken lots of people through the process. The process definitely works. There is a missing link somewhere. So if it is your nutrition, or your nutrition's fine from Monday to Friday, and then you're pisshead at the weekend, or it's the sleep, or it's the recovery, or you're just using the same weight, or whatever it is. And I actually, when it became most apparent to me was, so I've mentioned this before, there was two gym codes, the original one that I used to train in, and then the one that I worked out of. When I stopped working in the one that I worked out of, I went back to the one that I trained in for like just one session. And it had literally been 5 years that I had been in the gym. And there was literally the same people in the gym doing the same workouts, doing the same weight, and looked exactly the same. And I was like, 5 fucking years of doing that same shit, and you look exactly the same. I was like, that is literally
that's my worst. The worst nightmare.
Worst nightmare.
Yeah.
And it is the people who are like, maybe had conversations with in the past, like, would you not, like, no? And he goes, no, I know what I did last week. I'm like, every rep and every weight on every exercise you did for 4 or 5 times a week last week. That is absolute bullshit. There's absolutely no way. Like, you need to have some sort of record of it. There's no way you have a memory like that. And they just do the same weights, and they look the same, like, I don't know, like, it's just not working. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, what do you tell you? Like, and generally, and not to, like, I'm not taking away from anybody, because you're better going to the gym and doing that than not going at all. But it was generally people who are a little bit older, as in, like, I've been doing this for years. Like, what do you know? I'm like, you've been doing that for years, but you look exactly the fucking same.
Yeah. Yeah. And, again, not to discredit them going to the gym and hitting that up and feeling good.
And that's what you want to do. That's fine. If you want to go and do it, like, maintenance is absolutely fine. Like, I'm not taking away from it at all, but don't say that, no, that doesn't work for me, because it works. Like, I know that it works for sure.
Yep.
Stands.
Well, wrapping this up, I mean, I think the biggest concepts to understand with all of this and what we're talking about is that, body fat percentage, if you want abs, is really important. Body fat percentage, when you want to see definition in your shoulders, your arms, your biceps, very, very important. So
the best way, and I think I said this to you before, the best way to make someone look bigger is to make them leaner. So if you want to look, if you want to look 20 pounds bigger, try losing 20 pounds of body fat. You will look much bigger.
Yeah, and you will, 100%. And it's interesting because, I went from, 248 down to 222, and I looked huge at 222, right? Because, the definition they had and everything else. And, I wore that super tight T-shirt that showed my muscles and everything else. And I was getting, the kids at high school, the basketball boys were like, damn, your dad's jacked, like, that's great, obviously. So body fat percentage plays a huge role in the muscle definition aspects and how big you actually look in those situations and areas. And obviously it looks more natural. I'm not saying you need to drop into like, sub 10% or 6% body fat or whatever, that's miserable territory. But, having a good, physique or body type to show off what you've actually accomplished or what you've been able to build is really good. And, again, it all just comes down to patience. It comes down to caloric deficit if you want to lose weight, or caloric surplus to build the muscle. And then from there, obviously the progressive overload and time under tension, which is going to be the really most important aspect. Progressive overload will be the most important aspect in your muscle building journey. So yeah, I think that's all the main areas we needed to cover today.
Yeah, I think so. I think that the biggest thing is understanding that progressive overload thing, that it is across the board. And I guess one thing that we do need to say, and this will probably finish this out, if it has gone like 3 weeks and you haven't progressed in a lift, because obviously we can't progress forever. There is a ceiling and there is a cap to it, or we'd all be doing Ronnie Coleman style deadlifts. If you go 3 weeks, and I've mentioned this to clients recently, like if it's 3 weeks consecutive that you haven't made progress or you've come like backwards, then it's probably time to swap the exercise. Now, it doesn't need to be a massive change. It can be similar movement, just a slightly different variation, or flat dumbbells instead of incline dumbbells, or incline barbell instead of incline dumbbells. Like it can be as simple as that. So if it goes 3 weeks and you're not progressing, then swap that out. It doesn't mean you need to completely rewrite your workout. Just swap that one exercise out, and then continue to progress on that.
Yep. Well, thanks everybody for listening to this week's podcast of Hacking Your Health. And
I can't believe we made it through with all the fucking up at the start.
And we're pros at this. The audience has no idea that this is totally YOLO all the time, right? So we totally, plan all this ahead of time. But, no, appreciate everybody listening for us this week. We'll catch you back next week. Another day, another time. Really appreciate all of our listeners sharing your progress and everything else. It's just awesome to see the community continue to grow. And keep going, keep doing progressive overload, keep building muscle, doing what you're doing, and get those goals that you want to. And we're all proud of you over here at the Hacking Your Health crew. And keep it going, guys and gals. Really appreciate you listening.
See you next week.
See you next week.